In all the known galaxies, across thousands of star systems, and among hundreds of intelligent species, humans had earned a very strange reputation. They were not famous for their strength. They were not known for their speed or their intelligence. No, humans were famous for one simple thing. They could not stay quiet. Lieutenant Jinho had served aboard the Galactic Harmony for 6 standard months. The ship was massive, carrying crew members from 12 different alien species. It was part of the Coalition Fleet, a group of 40 warships traveling through space on an important diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim territories. Jinho was a human male in his early 30s. He had short black hair, tired eyes, and a habit of whistling old songs from Earth whenever he walked through the ship's corridors. He commanded 43 human crew members aboard the Harmony. It was not a large number compared to the 5,000 aliens on board, but somehow, everyone on the ship knew where the humans were at all times, because humans never stopped making noise. The Velith species called humans the children who fear silence. The Velith were tall, thin creatures with silver scales and large yellow eyes. They communicated through subtle color changes in their skin and found human speech patterns exhausting. Their admiral, a serious male named Corvus, had been patient with the human crew, but even he sometimes looked at them with confusion. The insectoid Kreth had written 17 academic papers about human acoustic behavior. They could not understand why humans talked to machines that could not answer. They could not understand why humans made sounds with their mouths even when they were alone. One Kreth scientist had followed Jinho for an entire day and documented that the human had made noise for 23 out of 24 hours. Jinho had laughed when he heard about this. He did not think he was unusual. He was simply human. Chief Engineer Sujin ran the human engineering section on Deck 7. She was a small woman with strong hands and a loud voice that could be heard 3 corridors away. Her team of 12 engineers worked on the ship's secondary power systems. Other species had better technology, but Sujin's team had something else. They had energy. On any given day, you could walk past Deck 7 and hear music playing. Sujin loved old Earth songs, and she played them through the speakers while her team worked. Her best engineers, Taejun and Woojin, often argued about sports teams that no longer existed on a planet they had never visited. Yuna, the youngest member, sang quietly while checking power readings. Dohyun told jokes that nobody laughed at, but he kept telling them anyway. The alien crew members found this behavior fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. One day, a young Velith officer asked Lieutenant Hannah why humans made so much noise. Hannah was Jinho's second-in-command, a calm woman with a gentle smile, who served as the bridge between the human crew and the alien. Command structure. Hannah thought about the question for a long moment. Then she said, "On Earth, silence usually meant danger. If the birds stopped singing, something bad was coming. If the forest went quiet, a predator was near. Humans learned to fill silence with sound because silence scared us." The Velith officer blinked slowly. "So, you make noise because you are afraid?" Hannah shook her head. "No, we make noise because we are not afraid. When humans are happy, they sing. When they are comfortable, they talk. The sound means everything is okay." This answer spread through the ship quickly. The aliens began to understand something important. Human noise was not random. It was a signal. It was a message that said everything was fine. Admiral Corvus was a practical leader. He had commanded coalition ships for 30 years and had learned to adapt to the habits of many species. After hearing Hannah's explanation, he made an unusual decision. He ordered his technical team to install a special monitoring system in the human quarters. The system was called the Human Acoustic Monitoring System. It tracked the noise levels in the human sections of the ship and displayed the readings on a console in the command center. Other officers thought it was a joke at first, but Corvus was serious. "Humans are the most honest species I have ever met," he explained to his confused staff. "They cannot hide their emotions. If they are happy, you will hear it. If they are worried, you will hear it. And if they are scared, truly scared, they will go silent." He paused and looked at the monitoring console. "If that number ever reaches 0, something is very wrong." The system ran quietly in the background for months. Every day, it recorded the sounds of human activity. Laughter during mealtimes. Arguments in the recreation room. Sujin's music playing in the engineering bay. The endless chatter of a species that could not sit still. The number never dropped below 50 decibels. The humans were always making noise. Always. Other crew members began to find comfort in this. The sound of humans became like background music on the ship. It meant safety. It meant normalcy. A Kreth scientist admitted that he slept better knowing the humans were singing somewhere on the ship. Jin-Ho did not know about the monitoring system at first. When he found out, he laughed so hard that tears came to his eyes. He told Hana about it, and she laughed too. "So they are literally tracking how loud we are?" Jin-Ho asked. "Apparently, our noise makes them feel safe," Hana said. Jin-Ho shook his head with a smile. "What a strange galaxy we live in." He went back to his duties, whistling as he walked down the corridor. He did not know that in just a few days, that monitoring system would save 12,000 lives. He did not know that the silence of humans would become the most important alarm the galaxy had ever heard. But that was still in the future. For now, the humans kept making noise, and the ship kept flying through the stars. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. The number on the console stayed steady, and Admiral Corvus felt at peace. He had no idea what was waiting for them in the darkness ahead. The Nora Expanse was one of the most dangerous regions in known space. It was not dangerous because of enemies or pirates. It was dangerous because it was empty. Truly, completely empty. The region stretched across 40 light years of nothing. No stars, no planets, no stations. Just darkness and strange magnetic fields that made sensors unreliable and communications difficult. Ships that entered the Nora Expanse often lost contact with the outside galaxy for weeks at a time. Admiral Corvus gathered his senior officers before they entered the region. The meeting room was filled with representatives from all 12 species. Jin-Ho sat near the back with Hana beside him. "We will cross the Expanse in approximately 5 days," Corvus announced. His silver scales reflected the room's dim lights. "During this time, communication between ships will be limited. Each species division must submit hourly status reports through the backup relay system." A Kreth officer clicked his mandibles nervously. "Admiral, the Expanse has a bad history. 17 expeditions have disappeared in this region over the past century." Corvus nodded slowly. "I am aware, but those expeditions were small. We are a fleet of 40 ships with 5,000 crew members. We have the best sensors and the strongest shields in the coalition. We will be fine." The meeting ended, and the fleet entered the Nora Expanse. The first day passed without problems. The darkness outside the windows was absolute. There were no stars to navigate by, no distant galaxies to mark their progress. The ship's computers handled everything, plotting a course through the void based on old survey data. Inside the galactic harmony, life continued normally. Sujin played her music in the engineering bay. Taejun and Woo-jin argued about whether Earth's old football was better than its basketball. Yuna hummed while checking systems. The humans made their usual noise, and the monitoring console in the command center showed steady readings. Each species submitted their hourly reports. The humans were always first, and their reports were always too long. Jinho's messages included weather comparisons to Earth seasons that no one understood. Sujin's engineering reports contained jokes about the ship's older equipment. Dohyun once attached an entire song he had written about space travel. Admiral Corvus read these reports with a mixture of annoyance and amusement. Humans could not do anything simply. On the second day, the magnetic interference grew stronger. Communication between ships became difficult. The status reports started arriving late or incomplete. But the human section kept transmitting on time, loud and clear as always. Jinho walked through the human quarters, checking on his people. Morale was good. The darkness outside made some species uncomfortable, but humans had grown up on a planet where night covered half the world at all times. Darkness did not scare them. "How are the engines, Sujin?" Jinho asked, leaning against the doorway of the engineering bay. Sujin wiped grease from her hands and smiled. "Purring like a cat." "Whatever that means. I've never actually seen a cat." Jinho laughed. "Neither have I. They went extinct before we left Earth." "Then why do we keep saying it?" "Because humans are strange," Jinho said, and Sujin laughed with him. On the third day, everything changed. Yuna was alone at her console in the sensor monitoring room. It was a small space filled with screens and blinking lights. Her job was to watch for any anomalies in the expanse, though no one expected to find anything. The region was supposed to be empty. She was humming a song her mother had taught her when something caught her eye. It was not a signal. It was the opposite of a signal. A hole in the background radiation. A patch of nothing where something should have been. Yuna stopped humming. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowing. Background radiation was everywhere in space. It was leftover energy from the beginning of the universe. It was constant and predictable. But here, in this one spot, the radiation was missing. Something was blocking it. "That's strange," she whispered to herself. She ran a diagnostic on her equipment. Everything was working correctly. The hole was real. Yuna called Taejin on the internal communication system. "Can you come to sensor monitoring? I found something weird." Taejin arrived 2 minutes later, still chewing on a snack. He looked at the screen and frowned. "What am I looking at? See that dark spot? The radiation is gone there. Something is blocking it." Taejin studied the readings. His chewing slowed, then stopped. "That's not possible. There's nothing in the expanse big enough to block background radiation." They called Woojin next. Then Sujin. Then Hannah. Then Jinho. One by one, the humans gathered in the small monitoring room, standing shoulder to shoulder, staring at the screen. Nobody spoke. Sujin ran her own calculations. Her face grew pale. If something is blocking radiation, it would have to be massive. And if our main sensors can't see it, then it must be absorbing all electromagnetic signals. Jinho felt a cold sensation spread through his chest. His instincts, the same instincts his ancestors had used to survive on Earth for millions of years, began screaming at him. Something was out there. Something big. Something that didn't want to be seen, and they were flying straight toward it. The humans looked at each other in the dim light of the monitoring room. No one made a sound. Their breathing became shallow and quiet. Their bodies tensed like animals sensing a predator nearby. For the first time since boarding the ship, the human section fell completely silent. The music in the engineering bay had stopped. The arguments had stopped. The laughter had stopped. In the command center, far away from the human quarters, a console began to flash amber. Admiral Corvus was reviewing navigation data when he heard the alert. He turned, confused. He did not recognize the alarm at first. It took him a moment to realize what system was triggering it. The human acoustic monitoring system. He looked at the display and felt his scales turn cold. The reading showed 0. Perfect 0. For the first time in 6 months, The humans had stopped making noise. Corvus stared at the number, his heart pounding in his chest. He remembered his own words from months ago. If that number ever reaches 0, something is very wrong. He reached for the communication panel with a trembling hand. Something was wrong. He was sure of it now, and the humans knew what it was. Admiral Corvus had commanded ships for 30 years. He had faced pirates, hostile aliens, and mechanical failures that should have killed everyone aboard. He had never felt fear like this. The monitoring console showed 0. The humans were completely silent. His hand shook as he opened the communication channel to the human quarters. Lieutenant Jinho, report. There was a long pause. Static crackled through the speakers. Then a voice came through, so quiet that Corvus had to strain to hear it. Admiral. Jinho's voice was barely a whisper. Tell the fleet to kill all active sensors. Right now. Do not ask questions. Do not transmit. Go dark immediately. Corvus felt his blood turn cold. Lieutenant, that violates every safety protocol. I need an explanation. There is no time for explanation. Jinho's whisper was urgent but controlled. If you do not shut everything down in the next 60 seconds, we will all die. I am certain of this. The Admiral looked around the command center. His officers were staring at him, waiting for orders. The Kreth navigation officer clicked nervously. A Velith tactical officer gripped his console with white knuckles. Corvus made his decision. He did not fully understand what was happening, but he trusted the humans. Their silence had told him everything he needed to know. All ships, emergency protocol black, he announced through the fleet communication system. Kill all active sensors. Stop all transmissions. Go completely dark. This is not a drill. Confusion erupted across the fleet. Officers from other species demanded explanations. The Kreth commander of another ship protested loudly. But Corvus repeated the order, his voice sharp and commanding. Within 30 seconds, the entire coalition fleet went silent. The great warships stopped pinging their sensors. Communication arrays went offline. Navigation systems switched to passive mode only. The 40 ships became ghosts drifting through the darkness of the Nora expanse in the human quarters. Jinho slowly exhaled. He looked at his crew, all of them standing frozen in the monitoring room. Their eyes were wide with fear, but their bodies were calm. This was not panic. This was the controlled stillness of prey hiding from a predator. Hana touched his arm gently. She did not speak. She simply pointed at a datapad where she had written a message. We need to tell them what we found. But no transmissions. Jinho nodded. He wrote his reply on the same datapad. I need to reach the command center, physically. No communication devices. He moved toward the door, then stopped. He turned back to Sujin and made a series of hand gestures. She understood immediately. The engineering team would monitor all systems manually. No automated alerts. No electronic signals of any kind. Jinho walked through the ship's corridors in complete silence. His footsteps were soft, barely making a sound on the metal floor. Crew members from other species watched him pass with confused expressions. They had never seen a human move so quietly. He reached the command center and entered without announcement. Admiral Corvus stood waiting for him, scales pale with anxiety. Explain, Corvus said, keeping his voice low. Jinho picked up a writing tablet from a nearby console. He wrote quickly, his handwriting messy but clear. Something is out there. Our sensors cannot see it because it absorbs all electromagnetic energy. Radar, communications, active scanners. Everything. That is how it hunts. It listens for signals. When it hears something, it attacks. Corvus read the message, his large yellow eyes growing wider with each word. He wrote his reply. How do you know this? Jinho paused. How could he explain human intuition to an alien? How could he describe the feeling that had washed over every human on the ship at the same moment? It was not logic. It was something older, something buried deep in human genes from millions of years of evolution. He wrote his answer carefully. We felt it. When Una saw the void in the radiation, we all understood at once. Our ancestors survived because they could sense predators before they saw them. That instinct still lives in us. We know something is hunting in this darkness. We can feel it. Corvus stared at the message for a long time. In his 30 years of command, he had never encountered anything like this. The idea that a species could sense danger through pure instinct seemed primitive, almost superstitious, but the humans had gone silent. All 43 of them at the same moment, without any communication between them. That was not coincidence. That was something real. He wrote his next question. What do we do? Jinho's reply was simple. We stay silent. We drift. We do not make any signal of any kind. The creature, whatever it is, cannot see us if we do not broadcast. We become invisible. Corvus looked around the command center. His officers watched the exchange with fear and confusion. The ship was dark and quiet. Only essential systems were running, and those were heavily shielded. He made another decision. He wrote instructions for his officers, passing the tablet from person to person. Within minutes, the entire command crew understood the situation. Communication throughout the ship switched to written messages and hand signals. In the engineering bay, Sujin organized her team with gestures alone. They checked every system, looking for anything that might leak electromagnetic energy. Taejun found a small entertainment device that was still active in someone's quarters. He shut it down immediately. Throughout the ship, the same scene repeated. Aliens who had never been quiet in their lives learned to move in silence. The Kreth stopped clicking their mandibles. The Veleth stopped their skin color communications, switching to written notes instead. The fleet drifted through the Nora expanse like a collection of dead metal. No signals. No sounds. No signs of life. Hours passed. Then more hours. The crew grew tired, but no one complained. No one spoke. They waited in the darkness, hoping that whatever was out there would not find them. In the monitoring room, Una watched her console with exhausted eyes. The void in the radiation was still there, and it was moving. She wrote a note and passed it to Woojin. It's getting closer. Woojin read the message and closed his eyes. He passed the note to Taejun, who passed it to Sujin, who passed it to Hana. The message reached Jinho in the command center. He read it and felt his heart pound against his ribs. The predator was coming, and all they could do was stay silent and pray. The creature moved through the void like a shadow made solid. It had no name that any living species knew. It had existed in the Nora expanse for millions of years, long before the first alien civilizations built their first fire. In the darkness of space, it was nearly invisible. Its body absorbed all light, all radiation, all electromagnetic energy. It was a living hole in the universe, a thing that existed only as absence, and it was hungry. The creature had fed on 17 expeditions over the past century. Ships then entered the expanse with their sensors blazing, their communications shouting into the void. To the creature, those signals were like bright flames in endless night, impossible to ignore. Easy to find. It would drift toward the source of the signals, its massive body moving silently through the vacuum. When it reached the ships, it would consume them. Not just destroy them, consume them. Every piece of metal, every biological creature, every spark of energy. Nothing remained. No survivors had ever reported back, because no survivors had ever existed. Now the creature sensed something new. A large group of objects had entered its territory. 40 vessels, thousands of life forms. The creature had felt their approach from millions of kilometers away. Their sensors had been pinging constantly, broadcasting their location like a beacon. Then, suddenly, the signals had stopped. The creature paused in its drift. This had never happened before. Ships did not go quiet. Ships always made noise. It was their nature. Just as silence was the creature's nature, it moved toward where the signals had been, searching for any trace of electromagnetic activity. Any ping, any transmission, any sign of life. On board the Galactic Harmony, the crew waited in terrified silence. Una tracked the void's movement on her passive sensors. She could not see the creature directly, but she could see where the background radiation disappeared. It was like tracking a hole as it moved through space. She wrote updates on her datapad, passing them through the chain of silent messengers until they reached Jinho in the command center. It is searching, moving in a spiral pattern around our last known position. Jinho read the message and passed it to Admiral Corvus. The Velith commander's scales had turned a sickly gray color. Fear showed clearly on his face. Though he tried to hide it in the engineering bay, Sujin discovered a problem. The ship's life support system was generating a faint electromagnetic field. It was tiny, barely detectable, but in the absolute silence of the expanse, it might be enough. She wrote a frantic note to Taejin. We need to reduce the life support frequency. Can we do it without losing atmosphere? Taejon studied the systems. He was the best engineer on the team, able to understand complex machinery through instinct and experience. He wrote his response after several minutes of careful calculation. We can reduce to minimum safe levels. Temperature will drop. Oxygen will become thin. But we will survive. Sujin made the adjustments herself, her hands steady despite her fear. Throughout the ship, the temperature began to fall. Crew members pulled on extra clothing and huddled together for warmth. The air became harder to breathe, but no one complained. No one made a sound. Hours passed like years. The creature circled the fleet twice. It passed so close to the Galactic Harmony that the void in the radiation filled half of Una's screen. She held her breath, literally afraid that even her breathing might somehow give them away. Woojin sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Comfort without words. Support without sound. This was how humans had survived for millennia before language. Through touch. Through presence. Through the simple knowledge that they were not alone. The creature moved on. Una watched it drift away, searching for other prey. She felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Not yet. Not until they were safe. In the command center, Jinho received the update. He closed his eyes and felt relief wash through his body like warm water. But he knew the danger was not over. They were still deep in the expanse. The creature might return. He wrote a message and passed it to Corvus. We must remain silent until we exit the region. No exceptions. The creature is still nearby. Corvus agreed. He transmitted the order through the fleet using signal lights, a technology so old and primitive that most species had forgotten it existed. But light did not trigger the creature's hunger. Only active electromagnetic signals did. The fleet continued its silent drift. In the hours that followed, the humans became teachers. They showed the alien crews how to communicate without technology. Hand signals for basic commands. Facial expressions for emotions. Written notes for complex ideas. The Velith learned quickly. Their color-changing skin was silent, and they adapted it for new meanings. The Kreth struggled more. Their species depended heavily on sound, and the silence was painful for them. But they endured. Sujin's engineering team developed a new system for monitoring the ship. They used physical gauges instead of electronic displays. They checked temperatures by touch. They listened to the engines with their ears pressed against the hull, feeling vibrations instead of reading sensors. It was primitive. It was inefficient. But it was silent. Admiral Corvus watched the humans work with a new kind of respect. He had commanded many species in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans had transformed from the noisiest creatures on the ship to the quietest, and they had done it instantly, without training, without orders. He wrote a question on his datapad and showed it to Jinho. How did your species survive long enough to reach the stars? If silence is so difficult for you, how did you escape your predators on Earth? Jinho smiled sadly. He wrote his reply. We did not escape our predators, Admiral. We became them. Humans learn to be silent when hunting. We learn to move without sound, to communicate without speech, to work together without words. Our noise is a choice. Our silence is a skill. Corvus read the message twice. He understood now why humans were so valuable. They were not warriors or scientists or diplomats. They were survivors. The most adaptable species in the galaxy. And right now, their adaptability was keeping 12,000 people alive. The creature continued its search in the distance. It found nothing. The fleet remained invisible, hidden in plain sight by their refusal to make a single signal. Eventually, the creature lost interest. It drifted away, seeking louder prey elsewhere in the vast emptiness of the expanse. But the fleet did not relax. They maintained their silence for hours more, just to be safe, because the humans had taught them something important. Sometimes, the only way to survive was to become nothing at all. 18 hours. That was how long the Coalition fleet drifted in complete silence through the Nora expanse. 18 hours of no communication. No active sensors, no sounds at all. 12,000 crew members from 12 different species held their breath while death circled around them in the darkness. When the fleet finally emerged on the other side of the expanse, Admiral Corvus gave the order to restart normal operations. The moment the lights came back on and the communication systems hummed to life, a sound erupted from the human quarters that could be heard throughout the ship. Cheering, laughing, crying, humans embracing each other and shouting with pure relief. Sujin started playing music so loud that it shook the walls. Taejun and Woojin started arguing immediately about something completely unrelated to their near-death experience. Yuna laughed until she fell to the floor. The monitoring console in the command center shot from 0 to 90 decibels in seconds. Admiral Corvus watched the readings and felt a smile spread across his face. It was the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. The fleet gathered in a protected region of space to recover and regroup. Damage assessments were conducted. Medical teams checked crew members for stress and trauma. Reports were written and filed. Corvus requested a formal debriefing with the human command staff. Jinho, Hana, Sujin, and Yuna joined him in the main conference room, along with senior officers from every species in the fleet. I need to understand what happened, Corvus said. His voice was tired, but gentle. From the beginning. Yuna explained how she had noticed the void in the background radiation. Sujin described the calculations that had revealed the creature's nature. Jinho talked about the instinct that had warned every human on the ship at the same moment. The alien officers listened in stunned silence. You are saying that your species sensed danger through instinct alone, a Kreth commander said, his mandibles clicking with disbelief. Without any scientific data, without any logical reasoning. Hana nodded. Humans evolved on a planet filled with predators. We developed instincts that operated faster than conscious thought. When danger is near, we know it before we understand it. And your entire species went silent at the same time, a Velith officer said. 43 individuals without any communication between them. We did not need to communicate, Jinho said. We all felt the same thing. When humans sense a predator, we become quiet. It is automatic. Like breathing. The room fell silent. The aliens looked at each other, processing this information. For species that relied entirely on technology and logic, the idea of instinctual knowledge was difficult to accept. Admiral Corvus stood and faced the room. "What I have witnessed," he said slowly, "is something that will change how we think about humans forever. Their noise is not a weakness. It is a signal. And their silence is not absence. It is warning." He turned to Jinho. "Your species saved 12,000 lives today. Not with weapons. Not with technology. With silence." Jinho smiled slightly. "Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is shut up." Several officers laughed. The tension in the room began to ease. Over the following days, the fleet analyzed the data they had collected about the creature. Sujin's team worked with Kreth scientists to understand its nature. They concluded that it was an ancient being, possibly millions of years old, that had evolved to hunt electromagnetic signals. The 17 expeditions that had disappeared in the Nora expanse had all been detected and consumed by this creature. No one had survived because no one had known to stay quiet. Jinho wrote a detailed report about human instinctual behavior and its applications in dangerous situations. The report was transmitted to Coalition Command and quickly spread through the Galactic database. Within weeks, every military and exploration organization in known space had read it. The response was immediate. The Coalition Council. The Coalition Council passed a new regulation requiring all exploration vessels to carry human crew members, not for their strength or their technical skills, but for their instincts. Humans became mandatory on any ship traveling through unknown or dangerous regions. The human acoustic monitoring system became standard equipment. Every ship in the fleet installed the technology, connecting it to emergency alert systems. If human noise levels dropped below a certain threshold, automatic warnings would trigger throughout the ship. Other species began studying human behavior more closely. The Kreth expanded their academic research. The Veleth created cultural exchange programs. Everyone wanted to understand how humans could sense danger through pure instinct. But the most important change happened in how aliens viewed humans themselves. Before the Nora expanse, humans had been seen as a minor species. Loud, chaotic, and annoying. Useful for certain tasks, but not essential. After the expanse, humans became something else entirely. They became the galaxy's early warning system. Years later, Admiral Corvus retired from active service. He spent his remaining years writing about his experiences with different species. One chapter of his book was dedicated entirely to humans. He called it The Sound of Safety. In that chapter, he wrote about the day the humans went silent. He described the fear he had felt when the monitoring console showed 0. He explained how the silence of 43 humans had saved 12,000 lives. At the end of the chapter, he wrote something that would become famous throughout the galaxy. "I have commanded thousands of soldiers from hundreds of species. I have seen bravery and cowardice, wisdom and foolishness, strength and weakness. But I have never seen anything like human silence. When humans stop making noise, the universe itself should hold its breath. Because human silence is not absence. It is warning. It means something terrible is coming. And if you are wise, you will listen to that silence very carefully." Back on the Galactic Harmony, life returned to normal. Sujin's music played in the engineering bay. Taejun and Woojin argued about sports. Dohyun told jokes that still made no one laugh. Yuna hummed while checking her sensors. Jinho walked through the corridors, whistling an old Earth song. Crew members from other species smiled when they heard him pass. The sound of the human meant everything was okay, that the monitoring console in the command center showed 80 decibels. Normal levels. Safe levels. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the creature still hunted. but it would never catch the coalition fleet again. Because now, the galaxy knew the truth. Human silence was the most powerful alarm in the universe, and as long as humans kept making noise, everything would be fine.